Hi, this is Karen Roy, and we are back with another episode of Life Possible with a Disability. And my guest is Dallas Crum from AMS VMI Vans. Hi, Dallas.
Hello.
So we're going to admit something right now, just so we can get it out of the way. We recorded this about 2 weeks ago, and the video would not sync up. So we have like this great audio that's already up on most podcast channels where you can listen to podcasts. And I'm not changing that because Dallas and I like it. And that's all that really matters.
Yeah, I don't think I can do that good again.
Whatever. So, but what we need was to have the video so that I can, for people who like to watch it on YouTube, and then my little clips that I'm going to put on social media. So we're going to semi reenact our first podcast.
Here we go.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so the way we started last time was I wanted to tell your story about how your dad sort of got into this business. I love that story. I think it's very sweet, and I think it's partially how everyone gets involved in this industry, right? They knew someone with a disability, and that's how you kind of get hooked into this beautiful community. So
Yeah.
take it away.
Yeah. So my dad he was in management at UPS, and they kept moving us around the country, and they wanted to move us to New Jersey. And my dad was like, I'm not moving my family to New Jersey. And he loved UPS. He said it was the best thing that ever happened to him, but he was tired of the corporate life. My uncle was in the car business and told my dad he should try it. So he took a risk with all the resources we had and started a little car lot in Cumming, Georgia. It was he did his best, but it was one of those little car lots you drive by and you think, man, I don't think I'd ever really buy a car from that place. But he took a risk and started a car lot, and through that process, we had a family friend at church who had a daughter with very severe cerebral palsy, and nonverbal on a vent, totally dependent on her parents, who were also the caregivers, and they were just the sweetest people. And they knew my dad had gotten into the car business, and so they asked him if he could help them find an accessible vehicle because they, didn't have one. And their daughter was getting too big to transfer, so she was in a tilt and space chair, and they needed a way to transport her. So my dad said, "Yeah, I'll try to help you. I don't know anything about this, but I'll see what I can do." And through that process, he realized that there weren't a lot of options, and the options that were available were just very expensive. And so he did end up finding them a vehicle, but decided there was a better way to do this to give people options for accessibility, not only options, but more affordable options. So in the very beginning, he actually started carrying IMS, Braun, and VMI's product line. So we were actually a mobility dealer for the three biggest manufacturers at the time. But we also started developing and selling our own product that we were able to sell at a more affordable price because we weren't sourcing it from a manufacturer and then marking the product up so that we could make money too. And selling it. We were building our own product, and then we were able to sell that at a reduced cost to the end user. Somewhere down the line, Braun, VMI, IMS, they all decided they didn't like that because we were selling more of our own product, than theirs at one point. So they all pulled our dealer agreements, and that was really kind of the catalyst to us selling our product nationwide. We started, early 2000s. We were the first accessible vehicle dealer to sell product on the internet, and we sold it risk-free nationwide. So we would deliver anywhere in the U.S. From Atlanta, Georgia, and if the family didn't like it or didn't work for them when we got there, we took it back, didn't charge them anything.
That seems risky.
It was, but my dad always said, we wouldn't put a family in a vehicle that we wouldn't put our own family in.
Wow.
And so through that process, we became the largest mobility dealer, single mobility dealer in the nation. And yeah, and then so almost 20 years later in 2017, VMI, who's the second largest manufacturer of wheelchair accessible vehicles and been doing it for 30 plus years, they actually acquired us and we became their direct to consumer division. So AMS still does what we always did.
Yeah,
And now we're
that's
part of
pretty
the,
cool. So if you can't beat them, join them. BMI.
yeah,
Eventually, you guys persisted through and became successful, and what a great story. I don't know your dad, but I think I would like to know your dad.
he's a good guy. Yeah,
Yeah,
he is.
he's
If you
really
got to
great.
meet him, he's a good guy.
Yeah. And you have been so in the business since, I was joking last time, since you were 4,
Yeah.
but you actually did start doing things for your job when you were like 12.
Well, I thought a lot about this because I listened to our previous recording on the way in today, and yeah, so my I would go to the lot, and my dad would pay me $1 a car to wash it, to wash a car when I was 12 years old. But this wasn't just like an outside wash. I had to vacuum the inside, wipe down the interior, and I don't know, if you do the math, it takes a lot of car washing to earn any money at $1 a vehicle. So, you know,
Right. Yeah. It's a
um,
bit, yeah. He was kind of feeding you though and housing you. I probably figured.
no, I'm thankful. He taught me discipline
That's
and
cute.
child abuse, labor. But no, I'm just
Right.
it was good. I'm very thankful for my experience to be able to work, in a family business that my dad started. And I mean, it had its hard times, but ultimately, I'm very thankful. But yeah, you know, um, throughout high school, I would help out on the weekends or after school, and then I didn't go to college because I had this opportunity and I had no desire, to learn a specific trait or get a
Right.
degree in
Something
anything.
different. Yeah.
Yeah, I just would have gone for the sake of it because that's, the natural next step, I
Yeah.
guess, for
Well,
most
that's kind of
people.
what I did. I did it.
Yeah,
I did that because it was expected of me. There was no family business to join.
right.
So I don't think I had a clue. Kind of figured it out as I went along.
Yeah, so I went to the school of hard knocks and got my education on the street,
Yeah.
through my family business. But
Yeah.
yeah, I did a little bit of everything. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
worked in every position, and now I'm the director of partnerships and community development for VMI and AMS. And that's how I get the privilege to work with New Motion and see you and go to these abilities expos and different community shows and things like that. So
Yeah. You do a lot still, because actually we were going to do this the other day, but you said there were 5 families that you were helping to try to find a van for. And I was like, yeah, do that. Cause
yeah, we're also
it's,
partnered with Chive Charities, which is if you're not familiar with them, they are an incredible organization, and they actually purchase vehicles for families who have individuals with rare diagnoses. So we're their partner, and I was working with 4 different families trying to find them vehicles. That's why I had to cancel on you. Sorry about that.
wow. And Todd, oh no, it's no big deal. Todd Dewey, who lives in North
Hmm.
Carolina, he's part of an organization like that. Is that the same one or different?
No, he's heavily involved with MDA. I don't
Okay.
know if
I think there's another nonprofit that they specifically fundraise for
there
blind
probably
and
is.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really cool thing. Well, okay, so part of what I wanted to teach everyone was um, all of the different types of products that you have. So,
Hmm.
for me, it's a lot more simple because I'm para, and so I use hand controls. And you've talked about the multitude of options there are for finding a vehicle that's accessible, and some of the pitfalls of like people trying to depending on the type of chair that they have, trying to use their current vehicle and what those obstacles might be.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's just so many options, and based on an individual's needs or a family's needs, those options are going to vary. It'll vary based on equipment, vary based on short-term goals versus long-term goals. So when we work with families and individuals who have mobility challenges that need accessible vehicle solutions, I always start off with a needs assessment or needs analysis, and it's a simple you know, a few questions. You know, who's using the equipment? Are you independent? Are you in a caregiver situation? You know, what's the diagnosis? Maybe the prognosis. What are your short-term goals, long-term goals? There's full-size vans. There's fully accessible vans with ramps. There's turnout seats that will, seats that will actually come out of a vehicle, lower to the
Mhm.
ground, pick you back up, bring you in the car. Then there's driving adaptations from hand controls to left foot accelerators to, low effort steering. There's all kinds of things that can be done. And then for some people, a lift on the back of their vehicle carrying their equipment might be a good solution. But typically, that's a solution people think will work, and then through the needs assessment, we learn their vehicle's not compatible with the exterior lift in the chair because it's heavier than the vehicle's rated capacity for the tongue
Yeah.
weight.
Yeah, and that's what I learned from
Yeah,
you was there's a difference between towing capacity and tongue weight, and
mhm.
I'd never even heard the term
Tongue
tongue.
weight, tongue weight. Yeah.
Yeah,
So every vehicle has, a rating for their tongue weight capacity, which basically means what it can support directly on a trailer hitch lift. So when you're towing something, that's totally different than if you are just carrying something on the trailer hitch receiver. So most vehicles, their tongue weight capacity rating is lower than the
mm-hmm.
combined weight of
The
the lift
towing.
and
Yeah,
the equipment,
yeah,
unless it's a truck or larger SUV, and then in that case, most of the
it
time
would work.
it'll accommodate the weight of the chair and the lift.
And you more often than not see that with scooters and not custom power chairs. Scooters way less, and but we also talked about the risk of having your extremely expensive piece of custom equipment uh, on the back of a bumper, which is going to be, you know, the first thing they hit when you get rear-ended.
Yeah, what most people don't realize is your insurance carrier or Medicaid, most of them allow some type of funding every 5 years for, CRT. So if you spend that on equipment that's either incorrect for you, or you get your equipment and you're not eligible for, anything new for 5 years, if anything drastic happens to that equipment
Right?
during that
You're in
time
trouble.
frame, yeah.
Yeah,
So
and they don't care. Yeah, and your automobile insurance isn't going to cover the cost of your power chair because honestly, the cars might be less
mm,
worth less than the chair,
right.
and yeah, so there's that. And if someone we talked about the people don't necessarily think about okay how tall do you sit in your power chair or your manual chair and then like clearance for getting up a ramp or using a lift and then actually if you're going to be driving the vehicle yourself does your chair fit in that
Hmm.
driver's space as
Yeah, I mean, not every side entry minivan is the same. There's, and same for rear entries. The door openings vary based on manufacturer or type of conversion, as
well?
well as the width of the ramp or the door opening. You can do in-floor ramps, fold-out ramps, um, manual ramps. There's
Mm-hmm.
there's just a lot of options, and part of the reason why we partnered with New Motion is once an individual receives their equipment through New Motion, um, they need somebody to work with them and through the process of finding a solution that will work for the equipment that they have and the goals that they have as well, to get them back out into the community.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, people don't not think about that sometimes when as a social worker when I was working in rehab and someone acquires a new disability and they maybe they're going to do power mobility and my first question is okay so how, does it fit in your home one and
mhm.
how are you going to get to a doctor's appointment because unless you're planning on just using a transport chair and another caregiver can you transfer but people don't think about the fact that if you want to have a life at all outside of your home, you're gonna have to figure out how to transport that thing.
Yeah, and it can be more affordable than you think. You know, we have inventory that starts around $15,000 and goes all the way up to 70 or 80 plus.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
depends, but there's all kinds of solutions at every budget point. And that's what we're here to do is talk to you through your needs, desires, your wants, and then match that together with a solution that will work.
Makes me think about there are, sometimes there are outside sources of funding, like vocational rehabilitation helps me. So when I figured out there was such a thing, it was like I'd already been in college for a couple of years with a wheelchair when I found out that voc rehab could help.
Hmm.
And one of the things they did, they helped me get my master's degree. And one of the things they did was purchase the hand controls because I needed transportation to get to school.
Yep.
Does someone talk to your customers about that?
Yeah, so that's part of our needs assessment. When we get the diagnosis, we can help. There is no, okay, you have mobility challenges. Here's funding you can go after. Um,
Right.
it very
No, I
much
know.
it very
Mhm.
much depends on your age, your diagnosis, where you live. There's different funding sources. Some are national, some are state specific, some are diagnosis specific. So we can help you navigate the resources that are available to you, and then you would actually have to pursue those on your
Yeah,
own. We're not able
correct.
to
Yeah.
chase the funding for you, but if there
Right.
is, we will direct you towards it and help you through the
Which is
process.
nice.
Hmm.
People don't even know that, especially when they're new to this whole thing. They have no idea that there might be alternative sources of funding that might be able to help. So that's
Right.
huge. So now I'm going to want to switch gears. We had a lovely conversation about your daughter, Riley,
Hmm.
and kind of your own personal experience. You and I both have, well, my Aunt Linda had an anoxic brain injury at birth. And so living in the world of intellectual disabilities was familiar to me from the time I was a baby. And I grew up with that and then joined a kind of a different segment of the disability community later on at 19 years old when I got shot. But yeah, if you want to tell us a little bit about your family.
Yeah. Well, first, I just realized we're both wearing blue. So
Yeah,
great.
I know.
Minds think
Yeah,
alike.
I know.
Um, yeah.
You would think
So
we
even though I
coordinated.
worked, yeah, we didn't coordinate that, but it happened. Even though I sort of grew up in the community of individuals with mobility challenges, you know, I thought I understood sort of what people experience and what they go through. And I thought I could relate just because of my experience working in the industry so long and with so many amazing people and families. Um, but then when my daughter was born, I realized I had no clue and I could
Mhm.
relate by seeing, but I had no way to relate through experience, and it's a completely different understanding. So I kind of relate it to, like, if you're not a parent, you can look at people with kids and think like, oh, you can imagine what it's like, or make judgments based on what you're seeing.
Yeah.
But once you do have your own child, it's like, oh, I never could have understood. So the same, I relate that it's the same way. So my daughter, we have a boy too, Ethan, who's 9, and he's awesome. Cool
The
dude,
big brother.
super cool dude, big brother. So when Riley came along, everything was pretty typical through the pregnancy. And then Faith, my wife, went into, I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks before the due date, just for like a routine checkup. And I got a phone call, and it was like, hey, I'm going into emergency C-section right now. You need to come to the hospital. So
Right now.
yeah, so it turns out like her amniotic fluid was low. I think that's the right word.
Yep.
And Riley had actually stopped developing like 2 or 3 weeks prior.
Wow.
So anyway, got in my car, drove way faster than I should have, but I like role played, like, if I get pulled over, this is what I'll tell
Oh
the
yeah.
cop.
You need an escort to the
But I didn't
hospital.
get pulled over. So yeah, so I get to the hospital, we go into the emergency room, C-section. They get Riley out of there, and immediately, it's kind of like this silence like went through the through the hospital room. And because when typically a baby comes out, you start hearing crying or whatever. This was very much like they got Riley out, took her to the corner of the room, and they were
That's it.
gone. Like, and we didn't. That was it. And we're like, what happened?
Mm.
Anyway, Long story short, she ended up in the NICU, the prenatal, the NICU,
Mm-hmm.
and she spent a couple weeks in there. And through that process, they kept coming in the room telling us, like, hey, she's got a couple holes in her heart. Hey, she's got these physical attributes that like signify there could be something going on.
Mm-hmm.
She had her abdomen wasn't completely formed. So, like, basically bile had
Surgery.
like leaked out. Yeah. They just kept coming in telling us all this stuff. And we're like, what is happening? So, they told us we needed to get some testing done. Being the really smart intellectual people we were like, no, she doesn't. um
That's more of a, that's not, that's a denial phase of right. And I went
yeah,
through that in a different way. Yeah.
yeah. So we ended up leaving the NICU like a couple weeks later, and she was fine. um you know it's, um with no complications at the moment, right? So we left,
Right.
and the next couple months, 2 or 3 months, we were like, oh man, yeah, I mean, this is not like our first child, Ethan.
Mm-hmm.
And so we decided to get the testing done. Turns out she had the diagnosis of trisomy 9 mosaicism. So she's an estimated one of maybe 200 people in the world.
Crazy
And
statistic.
yeah, and they told us, they were like, yeah, we don't really know anything other than this is the diagnosis. Good luck. She might be okay. She might not. We don't really know.
Right.
And
Helpful stuff.
yeah, so she had, I told you this, she had hip dysplasia, I think it was called. Basically, her hips were not in her sockets, and her socket for the hip joint was malformed. So they had to go in and reshape it, stick her hips back in her joints. And she wore this cast for 3 months, where it came, from her chest down all the way, abdomen, thighs, calves, to the bottom, to her feet. And she was like that for 3 months. And
Yeah. So you said that was 9 months to 12 months,
yeah,
right?
she was 9 months old when the surgery happened. So she, and I told you this is just one of those things, like, you're like, well, if she's in a cast from her chest down, like, how does this person use the restroom? Well, I'll tell you how.
Yeah.
They cut out this, little hole in the bottom of the cast, and you just shove diapers up in there, and you say a prayer, and every few hours you repeat that process.
Wow.
um but she's a champ, man. I don't know, she also had surgery for, like, it was called torticollis, so her like muscles were super tight and it was pulling her, and
Mm.
she's just been through a lot, but she's a champ.
You said she lights up a room, and one day maybe there'll
See
be an
that?
event in Atlanta, and I'll get to meet her.
Yeah, she lights up the world, man. She's an awesome little girl. If you get to meet her, anybody that gets to meet her is privileged, and they should feel that
Oh,
way.
yeah,
No,
yeah, that's awesome.
we she's developmentally probably around a 3-year-old, and she's 7. So she, prognosis is unknown. Um, you know,
And you said that kids are kind of starting to notice and to mention it in front of Riley.
yeah, she has some physical features that are not prominent, but they're there. And if you look at her for any longer than a glance, you'll start to see them. And she doesn't know any different. She's living her best life, and she's just the coolest little person. But other people, specifically some instances with kids, have started pointing out some things, like, we were at the pool and she can't swim, so she's wearing a life jacket, and she's 7.5 years old. And
Mm-hmm.
not that that's like, maybe not be a big deal to other people, but like,
Mm-hmm.
kids are like, why are you wearing a life jacket? You're 7.5 years old. And then some kids have pointed out some things about the physical attributes that are non-typical, or slightly different
Mm-hmm.
than themselves, which is, they're just kids. They're
Right.
just asking
Trust
questions
me.
and pointing
Yeah.
things out.
Yeah. Yeah. Happens to me all the time.
Yeah.
Well, and not just children, but grown adults that say some of the craziest
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Some crazy questions. Yeah, and that's like, because I said, I've come to expect it. There have only been a couple times where someone framed something so offensively that I like came back at them with some kind of smart alecky answer.
Yeah.
That's very rare for me. But as a parent, I know that there's a protective mechanism that kicks in.
My wife makes fun of me because I basically role play scenarios in my head all the time. So it's like, dude, if somebody says something to me about Riley or they ask this question, like depending on how they are about it, like I've already scripted answers. Um,
Right.
I don't know. It's one of those things.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
you know, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
something that's just part of
I
our life
mean,
experience.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, my mom tells stories about she was the younger sister, but kids were throwing rocks at Linda on the playground. And, my mom was her defender pretty much from very, very young age. And, yeah, I think that gave me some of I was born empathetic, but I think that gave me an additional understanding as a kid and like going all the way through junior high and high school and forever, where um, I went out of my way to make sure that everyone felt included and didn't feel different, and um, you know, hopefully was the defender of people that were being bullied, basically, for being different.
Yeah. Um, I mentioned this the first time around, but it's like I I try not to spend a lot of time like the oldest person we've ever heard of with this diagnosis passed away at like 31. Um,
Mm.
and not to mention, we'll never be empty nesters. She'll always need some type of care while we're here or not. Um,
Right.
I'll never be able to walk her down the aisle. Like, there's a lot of things that I try not to spend time dwelling on, but also, acknowledge. And we're okay. Like, it's okay, but
Yeah.
try not to get lost in thinking about the what ifs and the
Yeah. I mean, you can't.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, yeah, not live that whole thing about not living in the past and not living too far in the future either. Just kind of
Hmm.
have to enjoy every day that we are blessed to have. And that's kind of how I've done it. I think when you get shot at 19 and you almost die, you realize really quickly people don't just get to live to be 85. Like,
Hmm.
you should be thankful for every day and make sure that you express that to the people that you love, because they can't predict this.
Well, she's my little Georgia peach and my
Aww.
rock star, and we have all kinds of little nicknames, but she's awesome, man. Yeah.
Well, we're almost up on 30 minutes. And I don't know, this was, I think, another great conversation, maybe a little different from the first, but we hit all the main points. I'm going to add, just tell us the web address for y'all's
Yeah.
page, and then I'll make sure to add it in the show notes.
Yeah. It's amsvans.com. And then you can also call us, interact with us however you like. We're here. We also have a dealer network of 300 plus dealers across the US. So, whatever your needs are, we can find a solution to meet those. And we'd love to work with anybody that would love to work with us too.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for doing this with me again. And I'll see you at the next Abilities Expo.
See you soon at the next
Yeah,
Abilities Expo.
I know. Thank you so much, Dallas.
No problem.